Hello, welcome to Doctor Who 50 Years Ago, the show that looks back to the episode that aired in 1970 and looks at the differences between then and now. This week, the explosive finale to the Silurians, where the military mind is mighty. I'm Ben.
I'm Luke.
And I'm Nick.
Here we go, into the news from 1970. On Monday the 9th of March, there's a report in the Times of London that the Atlantic Ocean is getting warmer by about 2 or 3 degrees Celsius, so say marine biologists. Plankton are heading north for cooler waters, which of course affects the biodiversity of the oceans. Such an increase in temperature, they say, could have a profound effect on our climate. We talked about the climate last week, but it does not plan to go away, so here we go again.
Well, it's quite depressing to discover that, oh look, the exact same things that have been talked about were being talked about 50 years ago in pretty much a similar fashion, except perhaps slightly less alarmist, considering they had 50 years on us to do things about it. But here you go, you hear things talking about 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees, increase of temperature. It all sounds wearily the same as what we talk about now. We humans have this amazing ability to just carry on and shrug week in, week out, 50 years ago and today.
On Tuesday the 10th of March, we discovered that there is a militant group of policemen's wives, hopefully not Robert Holmes's, who are trying to force a parliamentary debate, I know, and reverse on the removal of capital punishment, namely the hanging by the neck of criminals that kill police and prison officers. The group, however, has the setback of the resignation of their chairman, who claims that the committee is being used by right-wing extremists, namely the National Front.
So this is coming 6 years after the last hanging in Britain. That was on the 13th of August 1964. And this woman says she's been working on it since August 1966. And the thing is that they're right. You know, Mrs. Jennifer O'Connor, you know, she says that the committee is being used by right-wing extremists. And it's true, because the O'Connell woman was a member of the National Front, according to Wikipedia. And, you know, it's based on this idea that we're trying to protect our boys in blue. So it's trying to sort of use patriotism in order to stir up right-winginess and capital punishment. Nowadays, we're taking a slightly different tact. If the film The Human Centipede taught us anything, it's that people want really horrible punishments for paedophiles instead.
Well, yeah, you're right, because I remember until about 10 years ago, the BNP, the successor of the National Front, I think one of their key planks was bring back hanging for paedophiles, murderers and rapists, or something like that, where it's like, it's a difficult position to say that you're on the side of like paedophiles and rapists and whatever, because obviously no one is, but it's a slippery slope if you start killing people again, isn't it? You know. And also the equivalent thing as well with the Boys in Blue, where they're saying there is on Facebook, Britain First, or like, like if you like our boys off in Afghanistan. I mean, that's a bit old now, but things like that. It shows that their tactics haven't really changed in the last 50 years.
And finally, on Thursday the 12th of March, 18 to 21-year-olds voted for the first time in a British election. This was a by-election in Bridgewater, filling a seat vacant by the death of a Member of Parliament. I think we talked briefly last week about how this would influence the upcoming 1970 general election, in that young people, surprisingly, voted for the Conservatives, but also the younger generation were outweighed by the older generation, who were voting against unpopular Labour policies like decimalisation or bad balance of payments figures, or voting for right-winging, not POW. And because more people were able to vote, turnout's going to fall 3% in the next general election. But also, it seems that 25% of 18 to 21-year-olds were not on the electoral register for the general election in 1970. So perhaps in surprising the Conservatives with an early general election, Harold Wilson partly shot himself in the foot in some marginal seats where Conservatives thrived on an elder vote instead. It's interesting political punditry. Whether it's true or not remains to be seen.
Did they manage to do it correctly, implementing the 18-year-old vote?
Funny you ask that. In 99.9% of cases in the Bridgwater by-election, yes. But for whatever reason, a few 17-year-olds were able to vote and were given polling cards and so were able to vote because they were in the 18th year of their existence.
Huh.
So there are a few anomalies that need to be ironed out. But, yeah.
Thank God that, they did try this in a by-election first before rolling it out nationwide. Because we're talking about electronic voting nowadays. There is no way you're going to iron out all of the flaws with that.
You remember hearing about all the Russian interference in the American election, etc.?
Press Clinton, get Trump.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. It's kind of scary. Why you'd want that risk? It just seems more logical to do paper ballots. I don't know.
Or indeed, yeah. Or you could do, or I don't know, overcomplicate a caucus.
Oh yeah.
Convention that'll end well.
Yeah. Yes. Ben's talking about the Iowa caucuses, and they introduced a new app on their iPads or whatever. Other tablets are available, and overcomplicating it with technology made it completely fail, rather than how it used to be, where it's just written down on paper by people, and somehow they managed that fairly well. But now they try and put it on technology, and it will fall apart immediately.
Oh hell! That was the news, and now we shall discuss the Silurians, episode 7. It's the end of this serial, and it gives us a potential nuclear meltdown just to keep us in suspense. But of course, it's the ending that everyone remembers, as the Brigadier does what he believes is right and blows all the Silurians up instead of going down for another attempt at a peace offer. It sets him and the Doctor apart, and whilst there are a few repercussions, spoilers, it's still an excellent moral quandary to a okay conclusion.
The sad thing is that my estimation of this serial has actually dropped now that I've been taking vigorous notes on it and watching it one bit at a time. Most of it isn't as interesting as I believed it was and shouted at people who said it wasn't in the past.
I feel very vindicated.
I 100% agree with you on that, and it hurts me.
I am just basking in the glow of vindication now for always maintaining that this is my least favourite serial of the season. So.
Oh, you heinous villain.
We'll see you in the Ambassadors of Death. We'll have this out.
yeah. I suppose after the Ambassadors of Death, we'll know which one we all agree. Hopefully, it better be the other way around, won't it? You guys will be like, ha. See, we were right, and I'll be like, actually, Ambassadors isn't as good as I remembered it being.
Yeah, so this really puts a spin ball on our plans for asking the question: is season 7 heaven?
Well, no, this is still an excellent serial. I believe on my nerdy spreadsheet, this is an 8 still. For that to be the lowest rated episode of the season is extraordinary.
That's something, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think the reason that everyone loves the serial so much, apart from obviously the Silurians being great, whatever, is that ending. That final scene is just one of the absolute best in Doctor Who history.
Is it literally because it cements that this fully blown alien Time Lord actually can lose?
Yeah, well, it shows his limitations. He doesn't have full control. Now he's not this wandering like alien in a magic box. He's glued to Earth. His powers are somewhat limited, isn't it?
Yeah, he's glued to Earth and all its prejudices. Let's get into this episode in greater detail. The Doctor is kidnapped by the Silurians, which puts a minor halt to the distribution of the antidote to the virus. Lethbridge Stewart is talking to the Ministry of Defence, hint hint, whilst Liz and the unit soldiers discover the Doctor's disappearance separately, which is kind of funny. But it's all right, because Liz finds the formula the Doctor's left behind, so all's well on that front. The Doctor says as much to the Silurians, who continue to fight with UNIT. With the power station evacuated, power is lost to both the humans and the Silurians. So the young Silurian offers an alternative solution, which is making the planet uninhabitable to the humans. And the Doctor becomes their alternative scientist/hostage to carry out their destructive plan. Is this a bit spy thriller? You will do as I say and save the world, or I'll destroy the world, or I'll kill you and destroy the world. Mr. Bond.
Yeah, no, I was thinking there are a lot of Bond villain tropes in this episode that they start acting like Bond villains. Because there's this bit, and then there's the bit where they're like, they could kill all the humans and the Doctor, and they go, nah, we'll let the radiation kill them, in like classic Bond villain trope sort of territory there. I'm like watching them going, why did you do this, Malcolm Hulke? What are you thinking? This is so stupid.
Well, no. The reason why they do that is because that way you don't have to show a mass sadistic murder on television where they just kill everyone on the way out for good measure. You can't have that.
Yeah, violence equals irrationality.
Yeah, well, it's more... All right, I get that. It's more just he shouldn't have written himself into that scenario.
Devil's advocate here. Need I remind you of it's thrown his mind back millions of years?
Why?
This is a pretty dumb line, but, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yes, that is very stupid. But it's cool.
All right then.
It doesn't matter that it's stupid, it's cool, you know, he does that thing on the wall and he goes, ah! There's a dinosaur, so it's
Thank
good.
you for destroying the Devil's advocate, Luke.
Well, perhaps, maybe that, because Malcolm Hulke is normally much cleverer than this, perhaps actually this is him being stupid on purpose, which is he's showing that they've gone from being kind of like morally grey to now they're just morally black and evil and whatever. Like, so now because they're evil, they're stupid. So I don't know. What do you think, Luke?
Can I make a completely separate point?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, what caught my eye during this bit is when one of the Silurians is using his head thingy light to interact with one of the hibernation tubes, and the way that the head becomes a sonic screwdriver that can basically do anything. They can burrow through walls and burrow back, sealing it off behind them, which of course is impossible. But what this shows is that there's the difference between the machinery of the humans and the machinery of the Silurians.
Ah, yes.
Okay? They are forced to be separate, and the Silurians aren't able to do what they want to do without the machinery of the humans, which is why they want to obtain the nuclear power. So, both of these people could work together. You know, the Doctor's always saying, these people are scientists, we could learn from them. But they're constantly fighting each other, and, you know, at the end, they try and kill each other, right? When you have two very intelligent people, according to this episode, and some of them are corrupted, you get murder.
Dislike for the unlike, or dislike for the very alike? Again?
Well, it's kind of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as I say, I feel like I'm sure in his mind he was probably thinking of, Malcolm was probably thinking of them being another Homo something kind of species.
Homo reptilia.
Wait, I know you keep saying that.
Hominid.
Yes, thank you. Right, a hominid species. A relative of us, not some reptiles. They have to be reptiles for it to be shown on BBC.
The Silurians enter the power station to obtain nuclear power to both revive their civilization and destroy all humans by apparently removing the Valanan belt, which keeps sunlight from murdering us all. They have a machine that will do this by dispersing the molecules in the atmosphere with microwaves, killing a few people along the way. So, science graduate Nick, how's the science?
So,
Yeah.
No is the simple answer. The longer answer is, so you've got the ozone layer. The Van Allen belt is radiation that surrounds the Earth, and so it does have a protective element to it. But it's more to do with solar flares and whatnot. When it's just regular old sun, really the problem with the ozone layer, it's to do with hydrofluorocarbons, and what happens is they attack ozone molecules, which are oxygen 3 molecules, which, as you can imagine, if you know anything about the periodic table and chemistry, 3 oxygen molecules bonded together is extremely... Get rid of CFCs, ban them, and lo and behold, the ozone layer is replenishing now. But yeah, microwaves. Microwaves were a fairly new thing, I think. This is the same serial that... I'll talk about the science in the next bit, because it's in the next paragraph.
Yes.
Can we relate... I know it was very interesting hearing about the fact that an episode of Doctor Who for the 1970s doesn't have good science in it. Can we relate this to the time period? Such as how in the news we talked about global warming.
Well, I guess it's more... Again, the Van Allen belt is about radiation, and so we're still... Everyone's talking about radiation, nuclear power, etc., etc. So that's probably why Malcolm Hulke's heard about the Van Allen belt and not the ozone layer, because the ozone layer only gets into the public consciousness in the 80s, doesn't it? So that's probably why people know about radiation.
What we kind of have here is a very obvious difference between the Doctor Who of 2020 and the Doctor Who of 1970. In 1970, this is probably as much as you're going to get about global warming. They're basically sort of hinting at the vague idea of the planet warming up, which we can see they were aware of, as we saw in the news with the Atlantic warming up, a couple of degrees they found, right? Whereas nowadays
it's a giant foghorn.
It absolutely is, yes. Have you heard of global warming? Do you know it's bad? Shall we just mention it all the time? How about a poem saying it's bad? I think I've got a speech right behind in the sofa cushions here.
To be devil's advocate again, Malcolm Hulke does sort of try to do the same in Invasion of the Dinosaurs in 1974.
Yes, that's true. Although the science there isn't trying, I suppose. Is it trying to be realistic, or is it also just sort of hinting pollution. At the idea of it?
That one's more about generic pollution. Here, this is them saying we're going to get rid of the protection around the Earth against the sun. So this is more of a science fiction-y way of global warming, whilst that one is actually more about... That one's about humans have ruined the Earth, so we need to go back before humans. But I think that's more Barry Letts being, hating pollution and stuff than Malcolm Hulke, probably.
Well, it's interesting that over the next 4 years, in Doctor Who at least, it really becomes to the forefront, We've had plastic so far, and the next season will have even more plastic, and then Doctor Who starts to tackle it a bit more, the consequences of that, as opposed to in Terror of the Autons, where it's kind of this cool terror.
Plastic fetishization, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and don't forget the fact that we discuss mining and chemicals and the Green Death.
Oh, of course, yes.
So, yeah, that's a discussion on how Doctor Who treats science, technology, and what humans are doing to the planet 50 years ago and now. Problem solved, the Doctor attempts once again to make peace with the Silurians, but the young Silurian is still in charge and tries to kill him. The Brigadier kills the young Silurian first. The Doctor, in trying to fully revive the Silurians, again, attempts to get more equipment and scientists, but this gives the Brigadier time to lay explosives and kill them all, much to the Doctor's disgust. And now we shall discuss who's right, the peace-wanting Doctor or the Brigadier who appears to be working for the Ministry of Defence and the British government.
Okay, so I want to point out immediately that your description there was lacking a key detail in that the Silurian was opening up the hibernation tank, and as that Silurian is dying, in the background we see the hibernation tank opening.
Yes.
Exactly. So the Doctor isn't right either. He's as single-minded as the rest of the...
Yeah. Almost appeasement-esque, dare we ask?
I think it's more he refuses to see the bad in both sides. He only sees the good, and that is not necessarily... Sometimes you have to accept that people can be bad as well as good.
Yeah.
He seems to only want to see the good in both humans and Silurians, which is actually quite naive on his part to a certain extent. But, well, you see, that's the point, isn't it? He's been this, basically, had magical powers the entire series up to now, and suddenly he's had most of his powers taken away from him, really, hasn't he?
Yeah, and it leaves him with the potentially brash and arrogant-looking Third Doctor. Yeah.
Also,
petulant as well.
Yeah. There's a little funny in the more kind of weird way that the young Silurian tells Science Silurian, I think. Yeah, we'll be back in 50 years to kill the apes. 50 years have passed, and there's now a soon-to-be pandemic about. That's just kind of reality being stranger than fiction, isn't it? Another thing is that there's that meme of the brig never gets to shoot the aliens because they're all impervious to bullets. Oh, only in the second serial of the Third Doctor era do we get him to actually kill, well, not kill, but mortally wound one of these things.
Yeah, and then blow it up for good measure.
Yeah. And then, finally, I was getting very much... I think I was saying last episode about this being like a Cold War sort of scenario.
Yeah.
In the sense that the Silurians represent the Eastern Bloc, who are more dictatorial, authoritarian actually, rather than dictatorial necessarily. And then you've got the more kind of liberal West. In the first scene, we see a soldier in the background. He's placing pins on Eastern Bloc countries. I'm reaching here. I found that funny that was what was going on. You know, when I'm guessing he's mapping where the virus is going. You know what I mean? Hmm?
Oh, I never noticed that.
In the background, there's a guy putting pins into a border of like Europe, and he's putting them into like what was the Soviet Union and like Finland. Well, not Finland, but around that sort of area.
This is where the virus is going. Italy! Iran! Oh, God.
Then the Brigadier says, no time to refer it to the Defence Committee. So the humans are being very slow to react to this crisis. It's because that represents the West, because we have all these democratic checks and balances. We can't, in democracy, make quick, sudden decisions, really. It's difficult compared to the Silurians, who are more authoritarian, more dictatorial. They can change direction very quickly, can't they? They just kill off the previous leader, and new one comes in, and immediately the regime is taking a different direction.
So I'm going to give some vague contextual things here that I have no evidence played any bearing in this serial at all, but I feel are major points to bring up. Okay, so Malcolm Hulke joined the Communist Party in 1945, and he leaves due to the treatment of people in Hungary. The Communist Party of Great Britain lost a quarter to a third of their membership after the Hungarian Revolution, right?
That's in 1956.
Yes.
It is indeed. Around the time of Vietnam, you had a massive resurgence in left-wing membership in this country, and the Communist Party becomes partly a pressure group on the Labour government. And most of the people who are joining it are students. And I find it interesting that the old leader is older, whereas the young Silurian is definitely younger. He's like a poison apple within this organisation. And I wonder how much this ideal of sort of like a warning to this, hyperactive youth coming into the left wing may have, to replace the old, in fact, may have played into the way this serial sees itself, because there's only really one evil Silurian. Everyone else is just sort of corrupted by that guy.
You could see it as that way, as the people who are starting to gain power on the left at this time. This is a warning. This is not a good idea. You go a bit too radical, overthrow the more moderate people at the moment.
Yeah. All right. So there we are. We have both scientific and political messages in this morally interesting conclusion. Yeah, there we go. That ties that up. Would you like some interesting facts about the making of this story, lads?
Let's gather round the fireside and hear some interesting facts about the story.
So, yes indeed, Terence Dicks commissioned Malcolm Hulke for a story set in caves with monsters from prehistoric Earth. As we've discussed, there are adult and mature themes in the Silurians, because 58% of viewers in a survey of those watching Doctor Who were adults, hence Barry Letts' wants to introduce said themes. Colour separation overlay, or CSO, or green screen to you youngsters, was used, lauded by Barry Letts, as an effort to save money in production costs. And yes, that bubbling pool in episode 4 or 3 is a booby trap. What of it? It's not a man trap, and it makes it work in the caves, and that's quite enough of reminding us of that. Pertwee is depicted as a brand new super brain with eccentric charm and a humour and forcefulness of his own, so say the critics. The younger critics recognise that the Silurians are Eocenes, of course, but overall the public see this serial as modern and sensible, gaining between 7 to 8 million viewers each week, and good on it, because modern, sensible Doctor Who is my thing, and so is the Silurians. Yeah, my interest wobbled by watching the episodes week to week rather than a 3-hour marathon, but I still remain charmed by this serial, and I can only hope that the same occurs with the other ones.
I just want to put a counterpoint there. I actually found it, watching this serial, far more entertaining by breaking it up like this. I remember when I did try and watch it in one go.
You've stolen my enjoyment from me, Nick. I have lost enjoyment via analysis, and you have gained it via analysis. You owe me enjoyment of this serial.
Now,
Give
Doctor
it
Who
back.
fans, stop arguing. What do you think you are, current Doctor Who fans?
Hey.
Well done. The point is that people can like and dislike how they watch things.
It's not so much the analysis, it's more a case of this serial really highlights to me how these things were not designed to be watched in one go. They were designed to be watched in 25-minute snippets.
Yeah,
once
so
a
I
week.
should stop being a madman and watching it like that. Cool.
You can read so much into anything that Malcolm Hulke writes.
Absolutely.
Indeed, he's precisely what this podcast needed when discussing Doctor Who episodes 50 years ago and now. Thanks very much for listening. You can find us on Blogspot. It redirects to iTunes. Leave positive comments there, it helps. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube, where you can like, comment and subscribe. What happened to the British astronauts on Mars Probe 7? We'll be discussing the Ambassadors of Death starting next week. Until then, I have been Twang Ben.
I have been Twang Luke.
And I've been Twang Nick.
Thank you and goodbye.
Yeah, you struggled to contain that laugh, you bastard.
Yeah.